You're once again welcome to another edition of the Shirlma Show. On today's edition, we are honored to have someone who is doing an amazing job when it comes to teaching our kids. He's no other person than the managing director of Rebours Primary School. Thank you so much for being with us today on the Shirlma Show.
Thank you too for inviting me on the Shirlma Show.
It's really a pleasure to have you here.
The pleasure is shared.
I know you are doing an amazing job when it actually comes to teaching our kids, but let's know who is actually Mr. Tchamo Williams.
Mr. Tchamo Williams is nobody much, 30 years old, managing director of Rebours, last born of a family of 6. What more to say? I don't know. I'm just like an atypical person. I think that's the best way to describe myself.
Okay, so before becoming the managing director of Rebours, right?
Yes.
Who was actually Tchamo Williams?
I think I have always been someone that has tried to do things in a different way. Professionally, I have worked with 2 international organizations, and I just somehow thought that there was so much to share with the younger people rather than staying in the multinationals, and I prefer to, switch to education.
One thing that I actually find very intriguing about the way you're actually teaching young people is the fact that you're trying to kind of create this entrepreneurial mindset in them.
Definitely.
So what was the need for that?
Well, as a research student in psychology, and just as being whosoever in life, I had a lot of questions, and I used to wonder, why is it that a lot of the grown-ups try to go abroad? Like, what's the reason backing that? And in my research, I came to realize that it's simply because they don't have what they want around here. So, trying to dig a little bit more, I realized that the level of creativity is just so low around. Now, some of the people that are even creative do not have enough opportunities to sell their skills. So finally, I came up with this idea of, getting the children to develop their skills and getting them the right skills to sell them.
Wow.
And that's how I, work towards the entrepreneurship mindset in education of primary school children.
That's beautiful. But while you were talking, right, I was wondering, because when it comes to kind of like building an entrepreneurial mind or becoming an entrepreneur, there's always something to do with maybe solving problems. So how do you create problems for them? Because most of the times we come from backgrounds that parents have taught us that everything is supposed to be easy, or when there is a difficulty, maybe the parent comes in and solves it for us. So how do you create kind of like adversities for kids at this early age?
Okay. The first thing that I want us to keep in mind is that all children are entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurship in children is killed by the system. The system is the modern life. Like a lot of parents today make life too easy for their children. You have nannies, you have drivers, you have cleaners, you have people that do basically everything for the children. So to a certain extent, there is basically nothing to do. The second thing is that in school, we always want the children to have good grades, and we would want to do everything to avoid, like just make sure that the child's average is good. So again, that's another thing that kills the entrepreneurship in the children. So the difference with what we do at Rebours is really to build an environment where there are a lot of activities for the children. And all of these activities actually contribute in the questioning and the building of the personality of the children. Now, we can determine what the child is going to become, but we just hope that exposing him to a variety of situations will allow the entrepreneurship mind explode from him.
Okay. What kind of situations are we talking about? I'm just wondering so that
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. In school, for example, we have some projects that have been set up.
Okay.
We have fish farming, we have snail rearing, we have rabbit rearing, and we have some agricultural activities like aloe vera cultivation. The objective of these activities is first to reconnect the child with, what I call baseline activities. Agriculture is really the base. There is no society that exists without agriculture.
That's right.
Now, as they are engaged with these activities, they get to face some challenges. A very simple example is we had a situation of drought, and then we had the snails dying.
Okay.
So then the children need to start finding solutions. Okay, we noticed this because in our process we have some materials that they use that allows them to observe problems objectively. And I put emphasis on objectivity because I really don't want my children to just say things like the common man. They should be able to tell you that there is a black spot on the center of this apple, with specificity. And when they're able to do that, they also are able to think the solution with as much specificity as they are able to identify the problem. That's really what we're trying to build in those children.
Wow. So now, right, okay, your school, the Rebours, actually creates this environment where the students can actually have this entrepreneurial mindset. But maybe there are some parents out there whose kids maybe are not in schools that maybe can actually create this environment, but they too actually want to maybe build that kind of entrepreneurial mindset in their kids. So how can parents do that at home, in your view?
The first thing that parents need to do is question themselves. Unfortunately, we live in an environment, I can tell you that as a director of a school, where parents are successful, but they fail to realize that, before I continue, I need to remind us, I am a little bit Pan-African or Kamite, should I say. So I always live with the notion of history, because we are just beings in the continuum, we just occupy this very short piece of time in the history. And so it's important for parents to keep in mind that they also just occupy a piece of time, and that the future of their present life is the children. Now, when they keep that in mind, they will understand that if they seek their children to become entrepreneurs, then they need to make sure that those children are exposed to entrepreneurial situations. Now, that would definitely require them to do some research to connect with people that do the right thing already. And, one thing leads to another. They definitely will reach what they're looking for.
Oh, it's amazing what you're talking about. But while you're also talking, one thing now that I'm wondering is if you have time for all these extracurricular activities, right, or if other activities that are very important and key to maybe the brand, the Rebours, right? Then how do you guys actually manage to still sit in for the main exams, right? So how do you do that? Because the reason why I ask this is because most schools actually want very good grades, so that at least they can showcase the fact that they're having very good grades, and maybe you can attract other students to the school. So what is your performance, the school's performance in public exams compared to maybe other schools?
Okay, the first thing that I always tell parents is, or the question I usually ask them is, what do you want for your children? Do you want a high-scoring child, or do you want a useful child? It's very important to answer that question because it determines the type of training you want to give to your child. There are, more and more today, the scores you make in school do not really matter. Now, it doesn't mean that we do not focus on the scores. We as much focus on the scores that we focus on building the entrepreneurial mindset, because already I can tell you we have a whole department of academics. We have a school psychologist, and then we have a whole department for everything extracurricular. Now, the entrepreneurial program of the school is actually halfway between extracurricular activities and school activities, because you will be surprised that the national curriculum actually requires teaching to be practical. Now, it's just that I believe without any
evidence?
Well, I would rather say without any intention to criticize others, that the minds in a lot of schools are not well, sharpened to be able to blend the entrepreneurial approach of education to the national curriculum expectations.
So why is that? Is it because maybe sometimes teachers themselves, those who actually find themselves teaching the students, have never really been in maybe in businesses before? Because maybe they just studied and somehow they became teachers. So they themselves have not even experienced maybe this entrepreneurship, right? And so how can they actually teach it? Is it because of that? Or
Well, I know a lot of teachers that have personal businesses.
okay.
In my school, for example, we have a lady that does, the fowl business.
Yeah.
So she is an entrepreneur, even if it's not like a legit entrepreneur. Now, in French, there is a proverb that says that les vieilles habitudes ont la peau dure. You know, like you've been taught to teach in a specific way, and it is difficult for you to detach from that old mindset. And I think that's really where the challenge is, getting the teachers to understand that there is a new way to do things with the era in which we are, which comes back to the notion of history. If you fail to understand history, you fail to understand what your role to play is, and you fail to give the right education to the children.
Wow. More with Mr. Tchamo Williams after the break. If you're just joining us today on the Shirlma Show, we've been in the presence of Mr. Tchamo Williams, the Managing Director of Rebours Primary School. So, Mr. Tchamo, before the break, we're actually talking about some challenges that maybe parents actually face in creating the culture and entrepreneurial culture, and you're giving us maybe the techniques in which you can use to create this kind of entrepreneurial culture. But another thing that actually comes with entrepreneurship is the fact that generally a successful entrepreneur is somehow rewarded, maybe with profit. So how do you reward children when maybe they're successful in gaining an entrepreneurial mind?
There is a concept called the 6th level of moral development, and the highest level of achievement is what is called self-satisfaction. So the very first thing I teach my children is to develop self-satisfaction, which is the best reward ever. Now, it would be nice if I gave them something, but the question is, who are they becoming entrepreneurs for? They're becoming entrepreneurs for themselves, for their families, for the community. And you see, it is very important to ground the child in this understanding. He's not doing it because it is a school requirement. He's doing it because it's part of history, which brings us back to the notion of history. And when the children get to understand that they actually are doing something for them and the community, the highest reward they can ever have is the satisfaction that they've been successful.
Wow. I really actually appreciate what you're saying because, so for instance, an adult like myself, there are certain times that you find yourself in situations where you really, in short, nobody will even praise you. Maybe somebody will rather even criticize you.
Definitely.
But if maybe you have that mindset, then it actually helps you to be able to appraise yourself and somehow be self-satisfied. Another nice thing about Rebours is that you guys are bilingual, right? But we've gone to schools, so I've seen schools that are bilingual, but nobody in the school is bilingual. So like there's this common statement now that is sometimes made that the Cameroonais bilingue, mais pas les Yes. So how do you actually create an environment where the Cameroonians themselves that you're actually bringing up are bilingual?
Okay, so actually our bilingual system is what is called the 50-50 system. So nursery to class 4 pupils have both English and French activities. So if they do maths in French, they do maths in English. If they do Français, they do English. If they do geography in French, they do geography in English. So they get the concepts both in French and English. And that's really how we bring up the bilingual children. Now, the biggest challenge is to have children that are able to express themselves, because it's one thing to know the concept, but it's another thing to actually speak fluently. I'm going to be very honest with you to say that's what we're really working on. Get the children to express themselves both in French and in English. You definitely have children that will be able to do that easily because maybe in the house the parents speak both languages, so from time to time they speak in French and then they speak in English. Now, for children that come from a single background, like either French or English, it's more complicated because none of the parents can actually assist with the other language. And so the recommendation that I always give parents is give them books. If you can speak with them, get them speak with the books. At least that way, they get to build the vocabulary, and if they find themselves in an environment of the second language, it's easier for them to understand and express themselves.
Wow, when you're talking about maybe assisting them with books, I've discovered that there's also this phenomenon where most of these parents will actually turn maybe to teachers, giving them maybe extra classes or maybe evening classes or so. But another thing that we have seen so far with this also is that this is actually like a way of raising money for teachers. But now sometimes they actually use it in the wrong way, if I may say, because instead of teaching the children very well in class, you have teachers that will not necessarily give in their best in class, and just because they want maybe extra classes. So how do you actually manage this, or what is your opinion on this?
Well, it's funny because I have one teacher that once told me, Monsieur Tchamo, vous n'êtes pas gentil. Vous avez facilité la vie pour les parents. Why? Because in our school, we make sure that the children receive maximum assistance possible. And I wouldn't say discourage, but we make it so easy, so convenient that if a parent actually requests for extra classes, it's either he doesn't have time at all, or or the child really have issues that need to be taken care of. But if we're talking of an average child that can understand, we have set up a lot of activities in school that allows him to find himself and then, go along with everybody.
Now, this brings me to another question. So how do the teachers manage? Because sometimes their salaries are pretty low.
Yes.
So how do they survive?
Now, frankly speaking, that's difficult to answer as a question because I really myself just wonder sometimes how they do. You won't at all stop people from having extra classes. But again, you need to understand extra classes is not a social standard of life. Like you can rely on extra classes because that's not something that is sure of. It's not a fixed income. That's what I mean. So really at this point, the best thing I can do is encourage the teachers to invest into some other type of activities. Like I told you, we have a teacher that already is into agribusiness, and we can only encourage them to invest into other activities. What exactly, I can tell you, because I believe that we have unique skills and it's only up to the teachers to work them out.
Wow. Okay. So now, right, a school like yours, maybe, if I may say, from what I've actually read, right, it's a school that maybe most teachers who want, most parents who want to send their pupils to. So, Bert, what are some of the things that maybe people should look at before choosing a primary school for their kids?
So interesting. I took some time in July to write like a 6 to 7 page recommendations on choosing a school.
Wow.
Yes, because anyways, the objective is not necessarily for parents to send their children to the Rebours. The objective is to build the society. I always tell my colleague directors, the teachers, and everybody that I meet that we are not in competition, we're building the society. The school is the second home to the child. So if he can build himself in the school, he spends most of his living time in school. Now, again, the notion of history. If you want to send your child to a school, make sure they understand history. Where did we inherit our education system from, and where is it going to? Because if you're just sending your child to a school because of the nice building, and all the fashion things that you see around, you probably are going to miss the point. Now, you also want to make sure that the culture corresponds to your expectations. How do the people that you meet behave like? What's the type of language they speak? How do they dress like? How do they entertain you? How do they receive you? Because mannerism is part of education. So if the way they behave from the entrance it's non-appreciable. You can already imagine what your children will look like when they get into the school. The next thing you want to make sure is to question the mastery of the people that are leading your children. It's not just about sending them to a nice place, but it's really making sure that the people understand what is expected and are able to restitute as much as the bigger than the smaller people. Is very important.
More with Mr. Tchamo Williams after the break. Are you just joining us today on the Shirlma Show? We've been in the presence of Mr. Tchamo Williams, the Managing Director of Rebours Champions Bilingual Primary School. So, Mr. Tchamo, what advice will you have for parents that are maybe looking for good schools for their kids, or teachers that are maybe trying to create impact in the way they teach?
The first thing I would recommend is do not go to a school because the school fee is expensive. Always try to find out what the content of the school is, because the fact that the school is expensive means that it's rich people's children that go to that school. It doesn't mean that it's quality education that is delivered in that school. Now, on the part of the teachers, I'll just say we can't stay stuck in the past. We use the past to build the future, and that's the essence of the present. The present is meant to build the future. So teachers need to continue doing research. They need to continue improving. They need to continue accepting criticism, because that's the way we progress. And they also need to keep in mind that they are definitely the people that made the society of tomorrow. So the way you behave is like 60% of everything you're teaching, and the 40% is what is on the board. So be the future you want to create. Do not expect the future to come to you.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. I can continue. But for now, let's relax with some light questions, I hope. Okay. So you just choose any three and feel free to change if you're not comfortable with any.
Who is your best Cameroonian musician and why? Now, this is a complex question.
This is complex. I thought it was going to be light.
It's light. The thing is, I love the music, but I am challenged with the content. Because, like, I am an educator, so I always kind of try to analyze everything that is said inside. And maybe before I reveal the name, I had a class with the children and I put one of his songs, one of the trending songs. Quand j'aurai l'argent. I guess from that we already know who that is. And I got the children to dance the song before we start the session. And I stopped and I told them, what did he say in that song? He says, Quand j'aurai l'argent. And I say, what will he do when he has the money? And they say, and I ask them, so is that what you want to do when you have money? So, yeah, Kosi is technically the musician I love, but I sometimes am conflicted with the content of his music. Definitely.
I get that.
Yes.
Okay.
Food cravings. Do you often allow food? There is this common proverb that is trending now. Quels que soient les problèmes que tu as, mange d'abord. Because the thing is, the only thing you're going to die with is your stomach. And, you want to die happy to have contributed in building the society, making sure that everything is good and fine. But you also want to die healthy. So it's good to have good food. And definitely, when I feel a slight headache, I go to food immediately.
Okay. Last.
What sports game did you play when growing up? Oh, this is a nice question. So, I played a lot.
Okay.
I played Nursery.
Hey, really?
Yes.
Oh, God.
I played Puspion. I think I played everything. I cooked. I cooked in the tomato cans.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's really been amazing having you today on the show.
Okay.
So how can people contact you?
We are on Facebook, Le Rebours Champions Bilingual School. We are on Google Maps. We are on Instagram, Le Rebours Champion Bilingual School. You'll probably discover a lot of what we're doing. And maybe one last thing that I might say, we have a lot of upcoming projects. We have the parent school that we are setting up, which is a platform for parents to rediscover how to create this type of challenging environment. We also have Enlightening. Enlightening, that is a program for teenagers, where we build the entrepreneurial competence and give some academic orientation. A lot of teenagers, teenagehood is the most traumatic period of life, and not managed the right way, you might actually have useless children at the end. So we want to make sure that the teenagers in the Enlightening program understand the socio-political, economic environment in which they are.
So, Mr. Tchamo, it was really a pleasure having you here today with us. And what we can only tell you is keep impacting lives.
Thank you very much. That's why we're out for.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing. We wish you nothing but the very best in all your endeavors.
Thank you.
Do you have like a number through which maybe they can get to you, or your social media handles is okay?
694113589. I prefer to give just this number because whatever the time, I'm reachable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. On today's edition of the Shirlma Show, we were honored to be in the presence of Mr. Tchamo Williams, the Managing Director of Le Rebours Champions Bilingual Primary School. Remember, we're here because you're there. Do not forget to subscribe to all our social media handles, The Shirlma Show. Thank you.